Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am joined by the amazing trio behind the Scaretalk podcast, Danny, Christina, and Joel. How you guys doing today?
Doing
Doing
good.
good.
Yeah.
Doing real good, yeah.
Oh, it's
Yep.
amazing to have you guys all here together. But before we talk about why you are here, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. You guys are a horror movie review podcast since 2020, started by Danny and Joel. You started off with just audio, but then you said, you know what? We're going to bring on Christina. We're finally going to get some good looks on here. Let's change this over to video. So you guys decided to switch over to the video aspect of things in early 2023. So I'll ask you first, Joel, what got you guys ready to start the podcast and do the podcast together?
So it's actually a pretty good story. I don't remember what podcast I was listening to at the time. This was like late 2019. Because we started like January 1st, like the first like week of January 2020. And I was listening to something. I was like, I could do this. Like this is something that, I feel like I could do at some point. And like 2 days later, Danny texted me and was like, "You want to start a podcast?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, yeah, absolutely." And it was a horror movie review podcast. We worked at Hollywood Video for a couple years back in the day, and we always were like just talking about horror, like movies in general. But I think horror was our favorite genre, and still remains to be. So, yeah, so it was an odd thing to have happen like immediately after I was thinking that.
Right.
So yeah, it was we started at probably the worst time to do horror movie review because we were going to like theaters and stuff during the early parts of before the pandemic, but still like within a couple months before it. But we got a lot of like older stuff in that we probably wouldn't have gotten in regardless. So it was definitely a bad thing, but it was also kind of a good thing for like, getting older movies going. So,
And also right
but
before, the huge, I mean, obviously streaming was big before, but
yeah,
before the huge surplus of streaming that came along with the pandemic
yeah.
and the amount of horror that came through after that, which is
Hmm.
awesome, the amount of horror
hmm
streaming, especially that we got. So,
Yeah.
uh, like you said, obviously Christina came on board. You guys started doing the video thing. Um, was this a thing where Katrina didn't want to do it at first, or was it one of those things where you were like, I want to do this. How can I become a part of this? How did that happen with you guys?
You want me to answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, Danny and Joel just kind of like started this as they always talk about this stuff, and it's just kind of like they were roommates before, and so they've always, and like Joel said, they worked at Hollywood Video, so they've always had these conversations. So I didn't even think about being a part of it. There were a couple episodes where I was like, oh, I have a lot to talk about with that, so I'm joining. And then as I had more and more to talk about with the different stuff, then I would just join more and more often. And then eventually, I think, I don't know how we officially decided I would join, but
Yeah.
it became a fun thing for me to be able to spend time with Danny, because he was being taken up by all of Joel's time. And so then we found a way to still hang out together. And I used to, when we were dating, I used to go over and hang out with Danny and Joel, so it was natural way to just join
Mhm.
me in.
Yeah. See, and it's amazing because the kind of same thing Sledgehammer Horror started as just me. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, Ashley kind of pushed her way in. I'm like, no, actually, she kept writing stuff. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this until you do it with me. So she'd come up with all these good ideas. And I'd be like in defense of, um, uh, didn't see that coming versus all things Ashley wrote. And I was like, yeah, I'll do them if you do them with me. So finally she decided to do it. And it makes life so much easier when you can work with your partner and your best friend. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the best
Yeah.
thing about this, guys, is you don't have to go too far to check out the podcast because I have all the Scare Talk links right down in the description. They also started a Patreon at the beginning of the year. So become a patron. Make sure you're subscribing to the channel. Make sure you're becoming a part of that family and following them on social media so you can stay up to date on all the amazing things they have coming down the pipeline for us as well. So in order for you guys to, go work at Hollywood Video and put a bullet in the head of my mom and dad's mom and pop video store, and then start a horror podcast, horror had to start for you guys somewhere. So now I would like to go back to the past and talk about what it was that got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And I'll start with you first this time, Danny. Your first horror movie was?
So when you were asking about this, I wanted to say Scream, but then I remembered Goosebumps, The Haunted Mask. I read all the Goosebumps as a kid. So when the show finally came out, they initially did like a Halloween special. I don't remember if it was on Halloween, but it was around that time for like a movie of The Haunted Mask. And I remember reading that book and thinking it was super scary as a, I don't know if I was 8, 9, something like that. And then that movie I loved it, but it also kind of freaked me out a little bit to see on screen The Mask, which actually,
Can you get it over there?
oh, there it is up there.
There it is. Over green.
On top. I always thought The Mask was really cool, and just the way it sucked to her face, and like she couldn't get it off like that. I have some claustrophobia, so that really kind of got to me, and the way it changed her personality and stuff. I actually watched it, I think it was last Halloween. I watched it for the first time in probably 20 years or something. And yeah, it's corny now, but back then
I think it
was
still
scary.
holds true to like
The minute
there's
she
some
shows up
scary
at that
parts.
shop, you're like, no,
Yeah.
keep going. Like I remember that. That was the first episode they had ever done was the
Yeah.
Haunted Mask, and obviously we're all over the moon, and we get the viewer beware, and you're like,
Yeah.
like I was, super ready to get going with it. So, what about you, Katrina? What was your first horror movie?
Yeah, so it's funny that you said you wanted to say Scream because Scream would probably be the first one that I watched that I was allowed to watch. But my first horror movie was It. And that was the 90s one. And I wasn't supposed to be watching it. My brothers were watching it. They're older. And so I was hiding behind the couch, like trying to watch some of the parts. And I learned very quickly why I wasn't supposed to be watching it. And for a long time, I was very scared to go in the bathroom, very scared to take a shower. And still to this day, clowns freak me out. I do not like seeing the original Pennywise, and I get really like I don't even realize if they're watching a movie with clowns in it. I'm like pacing or wanting to get out of the house, and I'm like, why am I so upset? And then I'm like, oh yeah, you have clowns.
Except for that guy.
Oh, except for this guy.
Yeah.
I can handle
Except
him.
for Art.
Yeah.
Even though
I've
he's
said
like
this before. What I love about the original Tim Curry's version of Pennywise, and don't get me wrong, Bill Skarsgård, amazing. He did an amazing job with Pennywise. But he always looks scary.
Yeah.
Tim Curry's didn't. Like he looked like a fun-loving, beautiful clown where you could approach him. He'd make you like a fucking giraffe and you'd be all happy. And that's why I think he was so scary to me growing up because he seemed like it was the real Gacy thing where it was like, a beautiful clown on the outside and a hideous monster on the inside.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why it really freaked us out to see Tim Curry's version of Pennywise because we thought he's trustworthy. He's amazing. But Bill Skarsgård, I don't care if I was 3 or 30. If I saw Skarsgård, I'd be like, nah, I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah.
But Tim Curry's, you want to approach it and have fun with him. So maybe not you after watching the film. I've heard about that floating business, and I'm out. So what about you, Joel? What was your first horror movie?
So I have a kind of a weird thing. Like I grew up with my mom until high school when I moved in with my dad. But my mom was always against horror movies. Like she wouldn't even watch a trailer for a horror movie. She'd like close her eyes and like or walk out of the room or something when a trailer came on. So but on my dad's side, when I would go over there and like visit from time to time, he was always pro horror movies. So I think the first one that I can remember watching was we rented The Ghost in the Darkness, which I mean, if Jaws is a horror movie, then this one is also. It's about killer lions, and it's based on a true story with Val Kilmer and Michael Douglas, and it's a really good movie. But that was from what I can remember was my earliest experience watching a horror movie. Um, and so yeah, that's just there's some scenes in that like I mean I've seen it several times since, but there's some scenes that like kind of stuck with me over the years. And like one of them was basically, they're in their tent sleeping, and one of the guys gets pulled out by a lion out of his tent, and takes place in Africa. And yeah, it's and he gets pulled out, he's screaming, and then he's quiet after a minute. So but it's a really good movie, and that's from what I can recall is my earliest horror movie that I watched. So
And I agree. I've always said that horror is what you make it. I think horror
mhm,
is the hardest genre to say,
yeah.
yes, this is a horror movie. No, this is not a horror movie. Because to me, horror is a feeling more than it is
Hmm.
an aesthetic. And if I get a genuine feeling of fear while I'm watching a movie, that's horror to me. So
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
never gatekeep. I've done episodes on everything from Willy Wonka to The Wizard of Oz to The Ghost in the Darkness. So
Yeah.
to me, if it scared you, that's horror, and I love it. I love the horrific, and it doesn't matter what shape or size it comes in. So
Hmm.
uh, Katrina, we know that you watched Pennywise, It, Georgie, all them together for the very first time with your brothers. But do you remember which scene it was that affected you the most?
Yeah, the bathroom scene, when she like turns on the sink and like the it's dripping, and um I think he comes up
The
through the
balloon?
drain hole.
Shower, I
It's the
think.
balloon. Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah.
Yeah.
with
Oh,
Beverly, there's
wait.
the balloon in the sink, and then
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eddie, he comes up through the drain.
Yeah, it's the balloon in the sink when it comes
Hmm.
up and it pops. I think it
Yeah.
pops like the blood. Yeah,
Hmm.
that. Well, I was just always expecting blood to come out of my sink then.
It's funny now as a 38-year-old to look back on a movie like that and look at how much that movie has stood up and how important that movie is to a lot of people, knowing it was made for TV. This movie never got a theatrical
Yeah.
run. It didn't have a huge budget. At the time, it didn't have a bunch of huge actors in it. Everybody was paid moderate just because of the Stephen King script. But I can't think of another made for TV movie ever that's done and had the impact what this movie has. And that's a real
Hmm.
testament to what they were able to pull off with the budget
Yeah.
that they had. And you talk about that scene still holds up great today because of the practical effects of a balloon in a sink and a blood explosion.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
CGI, it's not VFX, it's a balloon in a sink with blood, and that's all you get. And
Yeah.
it sounds so silly and so simple, but you watch it and you have that cathartic moment for her one of her friends come over and she's like, oh my God, you guys can see it too. Like when she knows she's not alone. You
Yeah.
have this moment of, that cathartic moment for her, which is such in a movie that is, yes, it's about a killer clown, but there's such a coming of age feeling to this movie and what these kids go through and growing together and becoming one with each other. Thankfully, not like they did in the book, but becoming together as
Yeah.
one is an amazing
That's
thing. So, we know that your love life with horror started with The Ghost in the Darkness. We talked about the tent scene for you, Joel, and what that scene
Yeah.
did for you. But do you have a favorite scene that you can remember from the movie?
Trying to think. It has been a little while since I've seen it. That scene does stand out to me. Um, there was a scene. I don't think it's gonna be a spoiler. I mean, it's a 30-year-old movie at this point. So, um, but like there was a scene towards the end where Val Kilmer and Michael Douglas are, I think Michael Douglas at this point, um, were like trying to hunt the lions down, and Val Kilmer is in the tree, like trying to. It's at night, and he's in the tree, and he's trying to like scope out where the lion is, and the branch breaks, and it's a whole intense sequence where the lion does show up after that, of course. And it was in suspenseful scene, intense scene, Val Kilmer against the giant lion. um but that's probably one that that does stand out besides the scene where the guy gets dragged out of the tent.
Yeah.
Which I mean that's yeah. Those two scenes I think are pretty intense for the
Well, and
movie.
like I said, you're
So
talking about a giant killer lion. That's pretty
yeah,
heavy.
two of them too.
Oh,
Yeah.
two of them? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was out at
Go
one. I'm double out.
yeah. Ghost of the
Um,
Darkness are the names that they gave the lions.
Okay, well,
They're
that makes a lot
yeah.
more sense then. I may be a Detroit boy, but I'm out at Lions.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
these movies having such a strong impact on us. I got to know with you as well, Danny. What was the scene from The Haunted Mask that affected you the most?
It's probably when Carly Beth finally she like gives in to her evil that had taken over her. Her friends like trying to get her to just go home and be done with trick-or-treating for the night, and she's like, no, I need to go. She wants to go like get revenge on the bullies and stuff, and she's running around screaming at people and howling, and it's like, okay, she's officially been taken over by the mask.
She's
So
full Jack Torrance now.
yeah. And she has like the stick with
Yeah.
her like plaster head that her mom made. So creepy.
Which was like so weird in the first place.
So
Right.
weird, yeah. And it ends up talking at one point, and yeah.
You
So
gotta
I
love it.
always thought that part was very memorable.
Yeah. Well, and we talk about these movies because they meant so much to us and they had such a big impact on us. We might not be the people that we are today were it not for our first horror movies. So we know now in Hollywood, remakes, sequels, kind of all the rage. And Katrina, we got that with It. So I'm going to break this down into 4 films. You have It Chapter 1 from 1990 with the kids, Chapter 2 from 1990 with the adults, and then obviously 2017 and 2019, It Chapter 1 and 2. Of the 4 pieces of film, which one was your favorite of the bunch?
Oh, the 90s for sure.
The
I
first
think
part?
that
Was it the
Oh.
90s
Was it-
kids or
the 90s
adults?
with the adults or the kids. I think with the adults,
Mhm.
I think that's where I don't know. That part's hard. Definitely the 90s above the new ones.
Mhm.
But I think I'm gonna choose the adult one.
That's an unpopular opinion.
It's a very unpopular opinion.
Yeah.
Hot takes, but I love it. I can't talk
usually
shit because
everyone's like
my favorite of the 4 is the 2019 at Chapter 2. I think that
Oh,
Bill Hader
okay.
alone sealed the deal for me on that one. He did such an amazing job in that movie, making me realize that he wasn't just like an extra in Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Like the dude could carry
Yeah.
stuff and feel emotions and just be amazing. So I get it, but it's hard for me too because I love all these films equally. Like I break them up into 4 separate films just because of length
Yeah.
of film.
Yeah.
And all of them are special to me for different reasons. So I completely get it.
Well, and I keep thinking the other scene is the that I think of is when he's in the library and it's like filling with balloons.
Mhm.
And that's the adult. That's when he's an adult and going back. And yeah, that sticks with me all the time too. So
And
yeah,
that's when
I'm
you
gonna
really
go for
get a
that.
lot of who like the real Pennywise humor, Well, you
Mhm.
better go and catch it. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
It's so great. Like that whole and like Richie's yelling at the librarian and everybody
Yeah.
else is like because they can't see or hear it.
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
Mike I'm at the motel. He's like, all right, bro. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with them doing all these remakes and requels and things like that, obviously the Ghost in the Darkness, is that something, Joel, that you would like to see them do today? Or is that like kind of let a sleeping dog lie type of thing?
I mean, it's not something I'm opposed to. There are definitely ones that I'm opposed to them, just like uh, remaking or rebooting. But that one, I mean, it's based on a true story. I don't know how much of it's true. It's lions eat people, I guess, maybe the only part. I don't know, but um, it's one that you literally just need two good actors and a good script, and you can definitely recreate it. Val Kilmer and Michael Douglas were like on top of their game in the 90s. I think that was like their decade. So like get two A-list actors, maybe not for today because I don't really know who that would be. But I mean, the A-list actors aren't nearly as, you know, easy to
Yeah.
come by as they used to be. But I don't. It can be done. I would watch it. I don't know if it would live up to the original, but it would give people who never watched Ghost in the Darkness a chance to at least see the story and then maybe go back to the original one. And that's really the reason I like reboots and remakes is it gives it gives people a chance to like revisit maybe an older movie that they never would have watched previously.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I'm usually not opposed to those kind of things, but there are ones that I wouldn't want them to remake,
There's
but
two
that
movies,
one,
two
yeah.
movies I've said that you absolutely 100% better not ever touch. It's Jaws and Back to the Future. Leave them alone.
Mm.
Don't touch them. And obviously, one of my
Yeah.
favorite movies, the only movie I think is the perfect movie, which is Pee Wee's Big Adventure. You obviously can't do that again. You'll never have another
You
Paul
can't have
Rubens
another
go
Pee-wee.
out there and do that. So, but I get it. Like I agree with you. I've been quoted saying there's no such thing as a bad remake because even with
Mm,
the worst remakes, reboots, requels, whatever, it does introduce a younger generation to movies that they may have never seen before. When
mhm.
Halloween 2018 came out, the views and sales of Halloween 1978 went up like 38% that year. You know, people that had never seen it wanted to go back and rewatch it, things like that. So even the worst remake or reboot, which I don't think that is bad, I think Halloween 2018 is fantastic. They
Yeah.
can serve a purpose and make people go back and revisit something maybe they had never heard of or haven't, checked out in a long time. So
Hmm.
um, with Goosebumps, it's kind of hard because we've had the episodic TV show, we've had a couple movies, and we just had an amazing series of Goosebumps that was just on, I want to say, um,
I think it
Prime,
was Disney
maybe
Oh,
Plus.
Disney
Disney Plus.
Plus. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fantastic. Justin Long, I thought it was great. They just signed on for a season 2, which will be different. We won't get closure on the beginning,
We're
but
getting
we
David
will get
Schwimmer
another
though, so
episodic type of chapter 2. So with this, and like I said, with the haunted mask being part of all that, would you like to see them do like a full-length feature haunted mask film today?
Oh yeah. That'd be cool. Um
No hesitation in that one. Yes, let's do it.
I think I would love it. I just for my personal taste, I'd want it to be more adult.
Sure.
Like I'd want them to make like a Fear Street, like they have the Fear
Yeah.
Street trilogy, which was, teenage but also adult material.
Fun.
And I think they could do that with the Haunted Mask, and I think it could be very well done.
Yep.
Because the original is good, but there is definitely some, just outdated effects and stuff with like the masks flying around and
The
you know
budgetary
the
restraints back then to where they had to rely on video game VFX
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
really sticks up today. So
yeah, yeah. So, but I think they could redo it, and it's a scary concept in
Mhm.
yeah.
general. Not being
Well,
able to take off this hideous, scary mask and it taking over you. I mean,
I
it's pretty
live it
good.
every day. Um, but
It's
with
like the
that too,
mask,
like
right?
the idea of what they could do with that, or even if they did
Yeah.
like a full on Goosebumps anthology film where we could get like a trick or treat with 3 of the main Goosebumps stories tying together at the
That would
end
be
with
cool.
like the haunted mask, say cheese and die, and go eat worms. Like
Yeah.
give me those 3 together, or stay out of the basement. That dad one was
Yeah.
scary as shit.
Yeah.
I remember rushing home on Friday night to watch Goosebumps, and like
Yeah.
I remember how important these were to me as a child. That gateway horror. Even though I'd already been watching horror, it was still cool to be watch kid horror as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you
Yeah.
watch these really scary movies, but it was funny even as a kid to go back and be like, yeah, goosebumps. This is dope. I love this.
Yeah.
Um, so we've kind of bounced the questions around, but this next question is going to be for all three of you. And I'm going to start with you this time, Danny. So you're going to be on the spot. Katrina and Joel, you're going to get to be cheater pumpkin eaters, and you're going to get to think about this question a little bit. So we've talked about your guys' first horror movies and what they mean to you. But Danny, my buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Danny? What is your favorite horror movie?
We have an
of all
episode on
time?
that, actually.
Yeah. Mine is Halloween, the 78. I feel like it's kind of a lame choice. I don't know. Like it's like so many people's favorite movie.
There's a
Horror
reason.
movie.
It's cliche
Yeah,
for a
but
reason,
yeah,
man.
there's a reason. And yeah, so that's we've done episodes. We did the whole franchise. We did ranking the franchise, our top 10 horror films of all time, and Halloween. It's always been there.
Yeah.
It's always I don't know that anything will kick it off just because of the staying power that it has, for myself, but also just for the genre. So when I consider all of that, I have to keep it at number one.
Not the first slasher, but it's the prototypical one, man.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
someone wants to learn the best way to write a slasher, show them Halloween 78.
Yeah.
I've never been a huge fan. I got to be honest with you. I know it's a hot take.
Yeah.
Like I said, my mom and dad owned a video store, so I was watching horror movies, in the crib. And I came into Halloween really late. I came into Halloween at like 10 or 11. And I'd already seen, Child's Play, Friday the 13th, and I'm like, this shit is boring. Like, what is everybody talking about?
It does take a while to kick in, but
Right.
it's all
And I'm
about
like,
the
man,
atmosphere and the
I'm like, oh, he stabbed somebody. That's cool. What's he gonna do next? He stabbed him. Okay. Is he gonna get a harpoon? No, he stabbed him. Okay.
This is just stab him.
As an adult,
Yeah.
obviously, I have a mad respect for John Carpenter and what he was able to accomplish with Halloween. And this is so scary because that could be your next door neighbor that just snaps and is like, man, I hate Star Trek. Let me ruin this Billy Shatner mask and go destroy people's lives. But it just like he's such a terrifying, monstrous human being. And then you get the subtext of Loomis and all these different things that you pick up on as an adult that you didn't as a kid. As a kid, I'm like, let's go, let's blow heads off, and let's how's it hang and fill and break someone's neck.
Yeah.
Like, let's do that, So mad respect for it. And it's one of Ashley's favorites, so I got to give it mad shit for that too. But all right, damn. Okay, hold on. You can ask him. All right, it's your turn now, Joel. What's your favorite scary movie, Joel? What is your favorite horror movie?
So mine can go back and forth. I have two. Like Danny was saying, we did do an episode top 10 favorite horror movies of all time episode on our podcast, and my number one on that one was Seven. That one can go back and forth to Identity is another. I think that was my second favorite horror movie, but is interchangeable. Honestly,
Horrors don't get a second chance, man.
Yeah, exactly. And that one I kind of want to mention more because that's one that I feel like got swept under the rug.
Such a good movie, man.
It really is, and I feel like a lot of people haven't seen it, and everyone needs to watch it because it's a great movie.
Both of those movies are fantastic.
Yeah, they are.
And what sucks is there's two different spectrums here because you have Seven, which has been memed to death of the what's in the box thing.
Yeah.
So people almost look at that as like a joke now.
Yeah.
And then Identity, you have this huge cast with numerous twists throughout the movie. Oh, this guy's a cop. Oh, man, what's happening with this? Oh, where the fuck is my face? What did you do to my face? I love Cusack. And I think that when Cusack does horror, like Identity, like 1408, he has this way of just transporting you into whatever role he's a part of. And everybody in that movie and Identity is so good. I'm with you. Ashley and I, that was one of our very first Didn't See That Coming episodes because of how much that movie means to us. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that because that movie is so good. And I do want to clarify for people that haven't seen the movie, there's a quote in the movie that's a very important quote that is horrors don't get a second chance.
Horrors don't get a second chance.
I don't ever talk to people that way. I was quoting the movie. I promise.
Yeah. I got it immediately, but yeah, there are other
people that
listeners or
haven't seen
viewers
it might be
may
like,
not
what
have.
the fuck is this guy talking about? It's a very important quote to finding out what's happening in the movie at the very end. So, all right, dude, you are the most impatient. All right, so now Katrina, it's your turn. What's your favorite scary movie, Katrina? What is your favorite horror movie?
So having to make these kind of decisions is always hard for me. So I feel like it depends on the day that you ask me. I'll have a different answer. There's some top ones that come to mind. I think that on the episode Joel's talking about, I think I said Scream as my number one. But then I think about like because I didn't like horror until probably a while after dating Joel. I mean, Joel. Danny.
Danny, we're actually here to tell you something. The reason we brought you guys on today.
Surprise.
Because there was that Danny and Joel's house that they would always want me to watch horror movies. And I was like, no, and I would hide my face. I never enjoyed it. The only one that I liked watching was Scream. But now I actually enjoy them. So now there's like all these movies coming to my mind. And I feel like one of the movies that I enjoy so much that I would never have expected myself to like because of what we previously talked about is Terrifier. I love the Terrifier movies, both 1 and 2, and I'm so excited for the next. So I feel like saying Terrifier right now. So
Which
today
is
it's Terrifier.
A great choice. I love what they were able to do from All Hallows Eve, into what Art the Clown. He's become a cultural icon, and what they were able to do in the box office for Terrifier 2 is just special. Such a low budget film, and being able to see how important it is to have another horror icon like that come to life, I think is so special. And everybody that's a part of it, especially part 2, Amelie McLean, who played the little pale girl, is such a sweetheart, and she's so kind and sweet, and
So
she has an amazing family that's full of love. And then you got Damien Leone, you got David Howard Thornton, who is just an absolute sweetheart and goes out of his way to be the kindest person on the planet. That's a franchise. I don't care if they go to Terrifier 23.5 in space after hell with a leprechaun. I'll be there opening night because I will support that franchise because of the filmmakers and the actors that are in it for the rest of my life. They've done special things for our family. They've done kind things for people we know. They're just great, great people. And those are the people that you always want to support and help. So, man, I've had an amazing time talking to you three about your first horror movies and how you put my parents' business, family business out of business. But
that was Blockbuster.
We always want to bounce back. I always have one last question that I ask. And what we're going to do is we're going to rank your first horror movie on a skull count. Now, we're not judging it on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. We're not being critics. All we're doing is ranking your first horror movie on how much it affected you upon your first viewing. So I'll start with you first this time, Joel. What would you give Ghost in the Darkness 0 to 5 skulls?
Based on everything, or just like how
just
it made
how much it affected you?
Okay. I based on just how it affected me, I would give it 3.75 out of 5.
Okay.
Oh, 3.7.
Break it down.
Yeah,
I feel bad.
Hey,
For
soul there.
the skull. That guy was just coming into work one day and out with a socket. How about you, Danny? What would you rank The Haunted Mask on how much it affected you?
Oh, that's a 5. Yeah. I mean,
It really
the Goosebumps franchise, like the whole series of books, I can consider that what got me into horror, and that was at a very young age. And then you throw that on the screen. Yeah. I've never been the same.
It is amazing because like you read the book and then you watch the show and you're like, wow, I watched this in a half hour. It took me 5 days to read that fucking book. Bullshit. Put everything on the screen. So what about you, Christina, with it? I think we've talked about your fear of the big guy, so I think I know the answer, but according to my script, I gotta ask. What would you rank it?
Definitely a 5. I would probably rank it like an 8.
So I know I said it at the beginning, guys, but we are at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, make sure that you are following them on social media. Make sure you are subscribing to the podcast. And make sure you're becoming a patron because as YouTubers, podcasters, it helps so much to be able to keep the product going and to be able to give you the best quality that we possibly can. So, and you get some added perks and bonuses along with it. So all those links are down in the description. So make sure you're doing that. Guys, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everyone else, if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. It helps to build the channel more than you know. And follow SledgeHammer Horror on social media. Our links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.